More than 25 years ago, the incidents that took place in the Arklay Mountains and Raccoon City revealed the existence of bioorganic weapons and changed the world forever. With the ever-increasing threat of BOWs, governments around the world rapidly responded by establishing their own counter-terrorist organizations to combat the monsters that are created by greedy corporations, terrorists, and evil dictators. In this video, I'll be taking a look back at the creatures of the original game trilogy of the late 90s, and analysing each of them in turn. And if you do enjoy this and want to see more, leave a like and subscribe, that way you can stay up to date on all future videos I put up. Before going through some key points to add more context to the monsters of Resident Evil, it's important to note that the story of the original game is slightly different to the remakes. The first event occurred in the summer of 1998, where an accident happened within the lab beneath the Spencer Mansion, one of many facilities owned by a pharmaceutical company called the Umbrella Corporation. They are a household name and supplier of various medical products, with branches all over the world. While Umbrella grew to become one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, they secretly built facilities to create and sell biological weapons on the black market. The secret side of the company made them richer, as well as more influential in global politics. These hidden facilities held many human test subjects, who were experimented on in order to make them into organic military weapons to be sold to the highest bidder. And it seemed that no one could stop Umbrella until the accident that happened in Raccoon Forest. Known as the Mansion Incident, the building was constructed over the Arklay laboratory on the orders of Umbrella founder Oswald E. Spencer. The mansion, as well as the guardhouse residence, became the home of Umbrella employees who were involved with the illegal research and manufacture of bioorganic weapons that took place within the underground labs. After the unspecified accident occurred, the viral weapon known as the T-Virus escaped the labs and soon began to spread across the mansion grounds. By the time the virus dissipated, it was already too late for the quarantined workers as they began to show signs of infection. And with no one in control, the BOWs were free to roam the mansion grounds and surrounding forest. After the destruction of the Spencer Mansion, Umbrella tried to contain the situation by manipulating the media, vilifying surviving STARS members, and bribing corrupt officials to aid in the cover-up of the event. But it would only be a few short months later that a far more tragic event occurs. Known as the Raccoon City Incident, its population of 100,000 became infected with the T-Virus after a skirmish happened in the sewers, resulting in the virus escaping and the infected rats to spread it across the city. The Tyrant virus, more commonly known as T-Virus, was developed for the purpose of making biological weapons. The first experiments were on human test subjects, before later being conducted on other mammals, amphibians, insects, and even plant life to evaluate the different effects on each species. Researchers were then able to create bioorganic weapons, or BOWs for short. It's highly infectious and can be transmitted in various ways, including airborne, bites, cuts, and ingestion of contaminated foods. Because of this, there is a greater risk of something that is called secondary infection, which means that some of the creatures were made unintentionally. The G-Virus, developed in the Umbrella facility below Raccoon City, is another bioweapon-making virus created to surpass the T-Virus. Where T leaves victims infertile and their bodies suffering necrosis, G-hosts are capable of asexual reproduction, and their bodies self-repair when severely injured, causing them to go through genetic mutations, allowing them to grow stronger. Unlike the T-Virus, anyone with G-Virus cannot pass it on to others. Its creator, William Birkin, is the only known person to have injected the virus into himself. So with that all in mind, let's take a closer look at the monsters. The most numerous enemy type encountered throughout the Spencer estate in Raccoon City are the zombies. These former human beings appear in various tattered and bloodied clothings, ranging from civilian wear to job uniforms that they were in during the time of their change, with their rotting flesh at different stages of decay. The virus is indiscriminate on who it infects, as all the zombies in the Spencer Mansion, the Arkley Labs, and the facility below the city were all Umbrella researchers who succumbed to the very thing that they were creating. Even the naked zombies that were experimented on now roam free within the facilities. They usually walk slow, with extended arms to grab their intended victims and chew on their necks. Some even dash toward their prey in an attempt to close the distance quicker. If close enough, the zombies sometimes try to launch forwards to get to their target's legs. As they don't feel pain, it only makes them more relentless in their pursuit, as the removal of their limbs have no effect. They'll continue to crawl forwards to bite at their legs, or sometimes even vomit acidic bile to make their living meals more digestible. Only by destroying the brain will it finally stop them. Named after the zombies of Haitian folklore, they resemble a corpse that has been reanimated by dark magics. But this is where the similarities end, as the virus cannot actually revive the dead until later games. The T-virus causes a drastic change in the host, destroying brain cells so they lose their intelligence while becoming more aggressive. Their bodies continue to degenerate, with the nervous system shutting down, resulting in them no longer feeling pain, and as zombies have a high metabolism, they'll eventually develop an uncontrollable hunger for living meat in an instinctive attempt to sustain their withering bodies. Like with most mammals, dogs are affected the same way as their human counterparts. While their skins rot away to reveal muscle and bone beneath, they become more aggressive, hunting down living food while unable to feel any pain. These Doberman dog breeds were selected by Umbrella researchers to be used in their tests in the Arkley Labs until the mansion's viral outbreak, when they escaped the grounds and began attacking hikers within the woods, while others continued to roam the mansion grounds. The zombie dogs encountered inside the RPD building and throughout the city are police dogs that turned during the citywide outbreak. They are fast and hunting groups, often using their teeth during a jumping attack. Although the dogs in the mansion move and attack the same way as the ones in Raccoon City, these dogs were experimental BOWs, given the codename Cerberus, named after the three-headed guardian dog of the underworld in Greek mythology. They were an early attempt at making a controllable BOW in the Arkley Labs after disappointing results on humans. The Doberman were selected because of their intelligence and quick learning, and are amongst the few dog breeds favoured for military service as well as the Raccoon City police force. The T-virus was injected into them to nullify their pain while increasing their aggression. However, the tests failed, as like humans, the virus destroys their brain cells and were unable to be trained into sellable weapons. The zombie dogs in the city are not BOWs, but are secondary infections, which means that they were made by accident and were never created to be used as bioweapons. These skinless creatures are the result of a rare and unintended mutation from a zombie. The licker's muscles increase, giving them the strength to leap across great distances, while their hands change into large deadly talons. And like their name implies, they have a sharp elongated tongue that can cut through flesh. Their mutation does have a drawback, however. Due to the brain enlarging and breaking out of their skulls, then merging with their eye cavities, the lickers are rendered totally blind. This lack of sight makes them sensitive to sound. The enhanced lickers have some notable differences, as they're slightly larger in size, have darker muscles, and scythe-like claws. The first recorded encounter with the lickers are inside the police station, while the enhanced variation remained trapped deep within Umbrella's lab beneath Raccoon City. Both licker variations have the same movements and attacks. They're agile and can scurry on all fours across the ground, or climb along walls and ceilings to ambush their prey. The lickers can either use their sharp talons to do a quick swipe at close range, or from further away either do a deadly leap attack striking with their claw, or impale them with their tongue. When the zombie siege took place on the RPD building, a new creature suddenly appeared that the police reports appropriately named Licker. What the officers didn't realise was that the lickers were further mutations of some of the zombies that had made it into the station. What triggers the transformation in some zombies and not others isn't exactly known, but it's thought that one possible theory is that because of a zombie's fast metabolism and their constant need to feed, some of them could randomly mutate after consuming large enough quantities of meat, or perhaps infected meat with a high concentration of the T-virus. As for the enhanced lickers, they've undergone further mutation because of Umbrella's attempt to weaponize the lickers after they were first discovered. Their precise origins are unknown, whether they are genetically altered lickers created by Umbrella researchers, or lickers which mutated after surviving exposure to the P-epsilon gas. They remain a threat to anyone who enters the underground lab. Larger and more aggressive than the normal crows, these birds are native to the raccoon forest region and are all secondary infectees. The crows were present in both the mansion incident and the city outbreak. Though they don't look to be infected with the T-virus, some of them on a closer look do appear to have bloodshot eyes. They'll mainly attack in a flock, overwhelming their prey and mauling them with their talons. The crows became infected after feeding off of a zombie or animal remains contaminated with the T-virus. What's worse, because of their flight capability, the crows are a potential airborne vector that can spread the virus over a wide area. Also native to the raccoon forest region are the adders. These purple-skinned snakes live in large groups, and some eventually migrated toward the Spencer Mansion's courtyard. When the accident occurred, the adders became secondarily infected after feeding on contaminated corpses. Though there were no physical changes to them, the virus made their venom more potent. They would lie in wait in the treetops and drop onto unsuspecting victims. While slithering along the ground, they'll do a jumping bite attack. One of these snakes was taken inside the lab as a research specimen and infected with the T-virus. It grew to gigantic proportions by the time the lab accident occurred, its skin color changing, and grew what appeared to be blisters all over its body. It was named Yawn by researchers due to the way it opens its mouth when swallowing prey whole, and its fangs secrete an especially potent venom, one that requires special serum to cure it. Purposefully bred for BOW development, the plan was put on hold following the viral outbreak at the Arkley lab. The Yawn managed to escape, where it found a new home within the Spencer Mansion. This creature became secondarily infected due to the proximity of the Dead Factory to Raccoon Park, where the soil in which this millipede dwelled may have been contaminated with the T-virus thanks to Umbrella's disposal process of infected corpses. It grew to gigantic proportions, and with its 4 mandibles and grotesque set of teeth, it can swallow a person whole. It began to burrow around the city, hunting for live prey, often using the sewer system to get around easier. This is where it also lays its eggs, that will eventually hatch into sliding worms. These larvae look like smaller versions of their mother, and like their name implies, they have slimy bodies which make them able to move around faster. The sliding worms are attracted to blood and will often try to jump onto their prey and cling to them with their small mandibles before sucking on their blood. When they've had their fill, they'll turn a red colour and unattach from their food. While the gravedigger's only attack is using its giant mandibles, it burrows beneath the surface at incredible speeds before bursting out of the ground to grab their quarry and devour them. Due to its size, the gravedigger is always in a constant state of hunger, and like the name implies, its main food source are the many former city residents that have been laid to rest, including the ones buried within the Raccoon City Cemetery. These insects are secondarily infected that have grown 5 times their normal size, with a larger stinger, and due to the mansion outbreak, these wasps also carry a deadly poison that is now harmful to humans. They reside within the guardhouse residence near the Spencer Mansion, where they work to build their nest and kill anyone who poses a threat to it. The infected wasps would encircle its prey before either thrusting their poison stinger into their bodies or will latch onto their faces to deliver the poison through their mouths. It's likely due to Plant 42 being nearby that these wasps became infected when they fed on the pollen of the plant monster, and after the accident in the Arkley lab, the staff were unable to contain the growing threat of the wasp's nest. Another group of infected insects were the cockroaches that dwell within the city's sewer network. Their exposure to the virus, like the wasps, have made them grow 5 times in size and become more aggressive. They are rarely encountered and pose less of a threat than other insects, but can be a problem if caught in the middle of them while in large numbers, as they will try to bite away at their target's flesh. Due to the close proximity of the sewer battle that led to the viral outbreak in the city, the cockroaches, like the rats, were the first to be infected and may have been part of the cause for the virus spreading through the city. This large moth has made its home inside the computer room of the underground lab where it lays its eggs. The mutation of the moth had a problem in that when it grew, the wings were not proportional to the body, leaving it only able to hover over the ground for a few moments, and due to its size, the giant moth is unable to escape the room. It attacks by either launching forwards to ram into people or grabs onto them to bite their heads, and will sometimes hover to spray a poisonous gas around itself. The larvae that hatch from the eggs, even with their small size, can be dangerous as they can spit the same kind of poison. The appearance of the moth inside the lab was no accident, as it was used in one of Umbrella's research into moth-based BOWs, but like with everything else, the accident left these creatures to grow unchecked. The appearance of these giant arachnids are similar to the dogs in the Arkley lab. Researchers tested the T-virus on spiders as opposed to their counterparts in the city outbreak, that were all secondary infections. The most notable effects of the virus on the spiders is its increased size, but there are minimal differences between the giant spiders and their weaponized cousins. There's one Arkley lab spider that grew even bigger after undergoing further experimentations, with its hair color turning blue and producing a more potent venom. Despite their size, all spider variations are surprisingly agile. They can climb along walls and ceilings, waiting for their unsuspecting victims to pass under before dropping down for the kill. Wherever they're positioned, the spiders can spit venom to poison them, or do a charging attack using their front legs to bludgeon their prey. If killed, the spider's body may erupt, releasing a group of baby spiders that will rush toward the target to do an ineffective jumping bite attack. The black tiger is much the same in most ways, except that it has an even deadlier poisonous spit, as it shoots out 3 globs of it in a wide arc. As the web spinners were created through the primary infection of test specimens using the T-virus, they were among the first bioweapons developed, but due to their unpredictable natures, control of the spiders was impossible, so they were not practical as weapons. Research on them was suspended, and most of the spiders were destroyed, with the exception of a few kept alive for data collection. But after the accident, the spiders were free to roam the mansion grounds and began to grow unchecked, including the black tiger that found its way into the tunnels below the courtyard and created a nest for itself. It's not known how this alligator originally made its way into the sewers, whether it was just a hatchling or as a normal-sized adult, but it too began to grow from most likely eating contaminated food after the rats and cockroaches started spreading the virus. The alligator normally moves slowly, but will charge towards its attacker to bite them if provoked. Like all creatures that became infected, the alligator turned aggressive, lurking near the garbage dump where it had regular food, and eating any living thing that approached its territory. It was eventually killed when its head blew up by an exploding gas cylinder. The Arkley lab wasn't the only research facility on the mansion grounds. Below the guardhouse residence, there's a smaller facility where Umbrella were conducting experiments on a great white shark to test the compatibility of the T-virus with fish life. But like with most mammals and reptiles, when subjected to the T-virus, it grew and became aggressive. During the tests, the Neptune gave birth to 2 pups before they all succumbed to the T-virus. It attacks by biting the victim's legs and trying to pull them below the water. If weak enough to kill, then the mother shark will jump out of the water and devour them. Named after the Roman god of the sea, the Neptune was an early project alongside the web spinners and Cerberus experiments into animal bioweapons, but like the other projects, this too had disappointing results, and much of the research team moved on to other tests. During the viral outbreak, an infected scientist went crazy and destroyed the tanks holding the sharks, resulting in the entire basement flooding. Neptune's end came when the basement's water was drained, rendering it and the pups unable to swim. Another experiment that took place within the guardhouse residence was the viral testing on plants. The result was a large carnivorous plant monster that fed on the blood of its victims. The plant grew to such size because of the contaminated water from the broken shark tank in the basement. Plant 42 grew to a monstrous size that its roots were able to reach down through the floorboards and feed from the chemical-rich water in the basement, while its vines spread throughout the building in search of living food. It attacks by swiping its tentacle-like vine at any potential threat. If they're out of reach, the plant monster can drop ceiling debris onto them, and given the chance, it will grab them and crush their bones, or otherwise slam them to the ground. The Plant 42 monster was created when a researcher injected a random plant with a T-virus out of curiosity, in the umbrella location designated Point 42. The monster inevitably grew out of their control as it expanded its tendrils around the building, using the cracks in the floor to attack passing staff members and feeding on their blood. The Umbrella staff discovered too late how to destroy Plant 42 due to the outbreak. Known as V-Jolt, the plan was to destroy it by applying this chemical mixture directly to the monster's roots. Its mutation didn't give Plant 42 the ability to walk, but this would be corrected in the following few months by Umbrella's continuing research. After acquiring the data on Plant 42, the information was used to develop a new type of BOW within the Raccoon City Underground Lab. These new plant-based creatures were designated Plant 43, or unofficially named Ivy. They are the size of an average human being, with appendages that imitate arms and legs. With these, the creatures now have the ability to walk, and some Ivies have mutated even further when Umbrella's anti-bioweapon gas failed to kill them, but instead made the creatures poisonous. Though they're extremely slow, the Ivies make up for it with their ranged attacks, as their head-like bulb shoots out a corrosive fluid used to digest their food. They'll also use this ability up close by grabbing hold of their prey and spraying it into their faces. If the Ivy has mutated, then the fluid will become poisonous. It also has a special move whereby if any threat appeared behind it, the Ivy can flip its head over its own body, and even use their arm-like appendages to do a forwards thrusting attack. When the Ivy drops to the ground in a dying state, it will use its tentacle in one last attempt to kill their attacker. As the Ivies were developed well enough to be able to adapt to almost any environment, they thrived on the airborne toxins of the anti-BOW gas that would otherwise kill most creatures, but it was not enough, as the Plant 43s, like everything else, perished when the underground lab blew up. The Hunters are one of Umbrella's most successful BOWs that they were able to sell on the black market. Since then, they've appeared all over the world in combat zones, and are one of the most deadliest creatures ever produced. They have sharp claws and are incredibly agile, with enough intelligence required to follow simple orders. By the end of the 90s, there were 3 known variations. Though their appearance differs, the Hunters have the same movements and attacks as each other. They use their claws as weapons that extend on both their hands and feet. As they are bred for combat, the Hunters will close the distance to swipe the enemy with their claws, or jump and slash at their torso. They may sometimes decapitate the enemy, or in some cases, devour them. The Hunter Alpha were created by injecting reptilian DNA into a human embryo before using the T-virus as a bonding agent. The result is the creatures developed a hardened green scaled skin with increased muscle mass that made them resilient and more difficult to kill. And while other BOWs suffered the loss of intelligence due to the T-virus destroying brain cells, the Hunters retained enough to be able to follow simple commands. After the accident in the Arkley lab, the Hunter Alphas managed to escape using the underground tunnel networks that led them towards the Spencer mansion. The Hunter Beta were the first attempt at creating a successor to the Alpha series, but the results were mixed, as they were more weaker than their Alpha cousins, and the experiments had left them disfigured as the abnormal skin growths on their upper bodies had spread to their faces, which left the Beta's vision restricted. However, they were more quicker in combat and also retained some level of intelligence to carry out simple commands. Umbrella took advantage of the outbreak in the city to send out and record their battle data before deciding on whether or not to mass produce them. The Hunters used the Raccoon General Hospital and the Dead Factory as their testing grounds. The Hunter Gamma were an amphibian-based hunter that could operate in water. Research on the Gammas were conducted within the basement of the hospital, where Umbrella researchers were using human DNA with a fertilized amphibian egg and using the T-virus as a bonding agent. This resulted in their appearance looking more like a large frog. This worked to the creature's advantage, as they were able to remain underwater for long periods of time, making them just as much of a threat as the other Hunter series due to them being able to perform ambushes from the water. The Gammas in the hospital were accidentally freed, while another group of Gamma hunters had established their hunting ground at a pond in Raccoon Park. While the Hunters were being developed, there was another project being conducted elsewhere within the Arkley lab. By combining human DNA with that of a fly's, then using the T-virus bonding process, Umbrella was able to create a new BOW called the Chimera. Bearing very little resemblance to a human being, their whole body is covered with fly hair and they have exposed human muscles, while their hands and feet have grown into sharp bone-like claws that can be used to hunt for food or to climb along ceilings. With this ability, the Chimeras are capable of attacking from directly above their victims by swinging their arms down to slash at them, and they can move on ceilings just as fast as they can move on the ground. Given the chance, they will jump onto their prey to shred their flesh. They also have a quick attack, where the Chimera does an upward vertical slice that works well for their hit and run tactics. Named after the Chimeras in Greek mythology, who were monster hybrids of different animals, these BOWs eventually became another failed project. Like most of Umbrella's other experiments, the T-virus destroyed their brain cells, which meant that they were difficult to control. The Chimera project, like so many others before them, was scrapped, and the researchers turned all their focus on the Hunters. After the lab was abandoned to the undead, the Chimera remained there as they waited for their next prey. During the Raccoon City incident, a new type of creature began to appear on the streets that Umbrella supervisors had designated as Deimos. They may have originated from a parasite organism, like a flea, that consumed the T-virus by drinking infected blood. By hunting for more blood, they continue to grow to human size. And another creature with similar traits are the brain suckers. Though the two differ in appearance, they both have 6 legs with chimera-like claws to help them climb along walls and ceilings. The Deimos takes its name from Greek mythology, as Deimos is the personification of terror and dread. Their backs have a protective shell while their front side is exposed flesh. With the increased strength in their legs, they can launch into the air and land in front of their prey to block any possible escape, and can even imitate a human walking on 2 legs as they rush towards the victim to drain their body of blood. If their target is too strong, the Deimos will try to wear them down by slashing away at them with their 4 front-legged claws. On rare occasions, they'll even lay an egg that'll hatch to release a tiny offspring. It will then try to drink the blood of the first thing that it can jump onto. The brain suckers are a close relation to the drain Deimos. As the name implies, these creatures will grab hold of their intended victims to suck out their brains. It appears to have two heads melted together, possibly due to the DNA of the infected host they drank from that may be a factor for this kind of mutation. They don't have an outer shell due to their mutation, but instead, they have the body of two creatures coiled together. The brain sucker's major difference is their ability to poison victims by spitting a venomous substance at them. While the T-virus was spreading chaos throughout the city, another situation was developing within the sewers. William Birkin, who infected himself with the G-virus, has slowly degenerated into a creature of instinct. As the G-monster, he seeks out a compatible host for his G-embryos and implants them into anyone he comes across. However, as a result of the embryo rejecting its host, they die instead of mutating, when the embryo pupates, resulting in a G-young bursting out of their bodies. After a short period of time, the creature grows into its full form, known as G-adult. Though deformed, it appears to have human characteristics. While it has one human arm, the other arm is oversized, with deadly claws that it uses to swipe across its prey. It also appears to have a human leg, while the other one has grown into a tail. The most distinguishable feature is its giant eyeball, growing out of the side of its body, and it seems to be a detail that is seen on any beings who become infected by the G-virus. The adult is also capable of producing more young by spewing them out of its mouth, and they'll act aggressively towards anyone in their territory by jumping onto their prey to gnaw on. The G-adult is neither a BOW nor a secondary infection, but a product of a monster's attempt at reproducing. And due to the speed of their growth, these monsters can rapidly multiply in a short period of time. However, due to the bombings that took place over Raccoon City, these monstrosities were mercifully destroyed. In the lowest basement level of the Arkley lab was one of Umbrella's most ambitious weapons development projects. The T-002, or Tyrant, was the corporation's attempt at creating the ultimate biological weapon, powerful beings that would be unrivaled in combat abilities such as durability, heightened strength, fast moving, and with the intelligence to follow a variety of commands on the battlefield beyond that of the Hunter models. The project was on hold for years due to the rarity of a certain gene for intelligence, which allowed a human infected with the T-virus to mutate but not suffer from brain cell damage like the other BOWs or zombies. But one unknown person was found to have successfully adapted with the T-virus, and the Tyrant project could finally continue. Tyrant grew to 3 times the size of the average man, his skin turning a greyish colour, with an outer cardiovascular system showing a large pulsating heart. His other distinguishable feature are his large deadly claws seen on the left hand that can extend for greater damage. The Tyrant was somewhat of a success, but further development of the T-002 never happened due to the lab accident. Awakening within the lab after years of deep sleep, the Tyrant was weak and slow to begin with, walking slowly towards his target and testing out his deadly claws for the first time. He attacks by either performing a cross slash, a forward thrust, or will try to weaken the target first with a double claw slice, before attempting to impale them. However, due to Tyrant's weak state, the STARS survivors were able to subdue it long enough for them to escape to the heliport. By the time they get there, the fully awakened BOW catches up to them. Now at peak strength and agility, Tyrant utilizes the same attacks from the lab with stronger force that knocks the targets across the heliport, and also has 3 additional attacks. Tyrant will turn to swipe his claws behind himself if the enemy tries to attack from behind. And as he's able to sprint at speeds that exceed even that of a hunter, he will either dash toward the target scratching the ground as he does an upward vertical slice, or extends his claws before charging forwards and knocking them across the heliport. But against overwhelming odds, the Tyrant was eventually killed by STARS in a direct hit from a rocket launcher. Following the mansion incident, what little data Umbrella retained from the T-002 experiments was used to produce the new T-103 models. These tyrants were intelligent enough to obey commands, had improved combat abilities, and even look human from afar, that would make targets hesitate long enough for the T-103s to close in for the kill. These Tyrant models were a success and went into mass production. They were given a specially made trench coat to wear on missions, including one particular Tyrant that was sent to the police station who would later be nicknamed Mr. X. After the debacle between the Umbrella Security Service and William Birkin, Mr. X was given the mission of recovering another G-Virus sample that was hidden within a pendant that Birkin's daughter Sherry was holding. Throughout the hunt, Mr. X would walk slow, but make up for it by the strength of his attacks. He'll do a hook punch with either fists, do a double hammer punch, or charge up his strongest hit for a killing move that results in his target getting knocked to the ground and stomped on. Whoever ends up with the pendant by the time he reaches the underground lab will still result in Mr. X falling into a smelting pool and left for dead. However, the T-103 survived the extreme heat due to a mutation that was programmed into the Tyrants whenever they suffered enough external damage to transform into a super Tyrant. Mr. X, now aflamed, had grown long claws on both hands, with his heart increasing in size to protrude from his chest. He's now able to sprint, scraping the ground as he does an upward vertical slice at the target. If close enough, other attacks he'll do are either a basic claw slice that he sometimes follows up with a backhanded slash, or he does a double claw strike. If given the chance, Mr. X will impale them for a kill move. But, like the T-002 before it, even this super tyrant was eventually killed by a direct hit from a rocket launcher. After the successful creation of the T-103 models by the American branch of Umbrella, competition with the other branches was underway to develop an even more advanced Tyrant, and it was the European branch that managed to make an improved BOW. They used a parasite called the NE alpha type that was able to counteract brain degeneration caused by the T-virus while increasing the host's intelligence to a level where the Tyrant could use weapons, speak simple words, and even infect others with the T-virus through the tentacles that have grown around the body. Nemesis was deployed into Raccoon City half a day before the arrival of Mr. X, with the mission of hunting down the surviving members of STARS. Dressed in a black overcoat with combat boots, Nemesis' upper body reveals parts of his tentacles that was formed with the help of the NE alpha type, but this genetic bonding between parasite and virus had caused irreparable damage, resulting in his lips melting away and missing a part of his face that's now crudely stapled together. Nemesis can sprint as well as jump incredible distances and uses a rocket launcher during his hunt for stars. His close attacks involve striking his target either with fist or with the weapon itself. He can also grab them by the neck and throw the target across the ground. If they don't escape fast enough, Nemesis will pick them up again to deliver the killing blow by using his tentacle to impale their faces and transfer the T-virus. After the battle with Jill Valentine in the Clock Tower courtyard, Nemesis succeeds in infecting her, but he too was severely injured and tried to retreat before dropping into the flames and blacking out. Due to Nemesis' advanced regenerative abilities, he soon returned to the hunt after Jill was cured of the T-virus. After the fire burns away his overcoat, the tentacles are now fully revealed. In this second form, Nemesis has a new set of attacks. He'll either use his tentacles to do a horizontal or vertical whip attack, grab their legs to pull them to the ground in front of him, or grabs them by their waist and slams the target into the ground before throwing them over his head. Catching up to Jill at the dead factory that Umbrella uses to dispose of their experiments, Nemesis was defeated again. His body was left amongst a room full of corpses and was eventually dropped into an acidic pool to dissolve. As the acid began to eat away at his body, Nemesis underwent a transformation that enabled him to escape the pool and continue his hunt. By now, it had lost all resemblance to its original humanoid form. Its damaged limbs were replaced for giant tentacles that allowed the creature to move on all fours. This final form of the Nemesis has various new attacks, such as using the front or back tentacles to do a cross strike, or can spit poison for a long-range hit. Nemesis was eventually defeated and damaged beyond repair after it was struck with Umbrella's experimental railgun. William Birkin was the creator of the G-Virus and one of Umbrella's top researchers. His ambition to rise through the ranks of the corporation led him to develop something to rival, if not surpass, the T-Virus. However, over time, Birkin's ambitions grew too dangerous for Umbrella as he moved his focus away from making BOWs for profit to his new vision of creating a race of superior beings. This led to Umbrella turning on him and sending a paramilitary group to retrieve Birkin's G-Virus. When he refused to hand over his life's work to them, they shot him down and left with a sample case. In his act of desperation, Birkin injected himself with the last sample he had on his person. As the G-Virus was not yet completed, anyone that had G in their system would mutate into a monster. The creature instinctively sensed a blood relative in the nearby RPD building, where his daughter Sherry had been hiding, and began to hunt for her. In Birkin's first form, he appears the most human, wearing jeans and a lab coat. His right arm has grown to such a size that a giant eyeball has appeared, and part of his abdomen has claws forming that will later become another arm. On his way toward the station, he confronts some of the survivors trying to escape and attacks them with a steel pipe. He'll either swing the pipe in either direction, or raise the weapon to hit it downwards upon the target's head. As Birkin succumbed to too much damage, he was forced to retreat by diving over the side of the railing. Birkin returns to the lab via the turntable, where his daughter has arrived. It's at this moment he has two separate encounters with Leon and Claire. He mutates into his second form, his weapon arm develops claws, has two arms forming on his abdomen, his human head melts into the chest to make way for a new monstrous one. He'll use his claws to do a single or double swipe, thrust it forward in an attempt to impale them, or even try to punch with his remaining human arm. But again he succumbs to his injuries and blacks out. By the time the G-Monster awakens, the turntable had returned to the factory for the other survivors to use. Birkin at this point is forced into another transformation. The human arm changes and grows another giant set of claws, while his second pair of arms have developed enough to be able to move independently, and his pulsating chest is forming teeth. He's now capable of jumping great heights, and attacks by using his biggest claws to do a single or double swipe. Raises his largest arms to walk toward the target and performs a combo of 4 deadly slashes, or will impale them with his smaller arms, lifting them into the air to deliver a killing blow. Before he can sustain further injuries to trigger another mutation, the monster retreats from the turntable. When the self-destruction timer begins in the underground lab, the monster encounters one of the survivors once again, only to be hit enough times to transform into his fourth form. The teeth from his chest now bursts open to form a large mouth, while the whole body repositions into something more animalistic. This form is extremely agile and can jump multiple times to get in front of the target. It attacks by either charging at the target, doing a cross swipe with his smaller chest arms, or can grab the target in its mouth to gnaw on. The G-monster sustains too much damage at this point that it's left for dead. It regenerated by mutating into a fifth form, where it manages to enter the train before the lab blows up. At this point, the G-monster is a giant mass with 4 large tentacles that it uses to pull itself along and to attack by whipping, and has a mouth that it uses to bite or devour prey. But even this transformation doesn't protect the creature from total annihilation when the train cars too eventually self-destruct. It's more than certain that the G-monster would have continued to mutate indefinitely to become an unstoppable force had it not been taken care of at these early stages. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video and I hope you enjoyed it. My next RE video will be on the monsters of both Remake 1 and Origins. I want to go through most of these games, like the remakes, Revelation games, and even RE Outbreak. So there'll be plenty more monster analysis videos to come. But for the sake of variety, the next creature video will be on Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, where I'll be doing a deep dive into the vampires and clans of Nosgoth, and that will follow on with plenty more Easter eggs and references videos. So if you're interested in any of these, then subscribe, that way you can stay up to date on all future videos I put up. And once again, thanks to all of you who have subscribed and are continuing to help make this channel grow. So until the next video, bye everyone.